Everyone saw him as just a dedicated doctor, a tireless man who did everything he could to save lives. But behind the white coat, there was a secret kept in silence, a story that no one dared to imagine. In the last row of the hospital, almost invisible, was a frail lady, and with her, the key to a past that explained everything. What seemed like mere generosity, helping without charging, caring without asking for anything in return, hid something much greater, a debt of gratitude that spanned because before becoming a doctor, he was just a boy saved by the hands of that woman. The hospital was simple. The walls, worn by time, bore the marks of silent stories, some of healing, others of farewell. The corridors were always crowded, people waiting anxiously, nurses rushing back and forth, children crying, mothers in silent prayer. The air mingled with the smell of medicine, alcohol, and sweat, but curiously, also the smell of hope. Among so many hurried doctors, busy and distressed patients, there was someone who stood out without needing to say a single word, Dr. Enrique. He wasn't the richest man in town, nor was he the most renowned in conferences or medical articles. But within those cold walls, he was known as the most human. He had a way of treating each patient as if they were unique. He didn't treat people like numbers on a file, but as living stories filled with pain, dreams, and struggles. It was common to see him arriving early and leaving long after hours. His colleagues wondered how he managed to endure so much fatigue without losing his smile. The answer lay in his heart. Dr. Enrique believed that medicine was more than a job, it was a mission. He knelt to talk to children, held the hands of elderly people during checkups, and offered words of comfort to families whose hopes had been lost. And when he could, he provided care free of charge. For him, saving a life was always worth more than any amount of money. But there was something no one could understand. Among so many patients, there was one lady in particular, Mrs. Teresa. She was discreet, almost invisible to the hurried eyes of the hospital. She walked slowly, with short steps, leaning on a cane that already seemed part of her body. Her hair was completely white, her skin marked by deep wrinkles. But her eyes, her eyes had a sweetness that was hard to describe. Donna Teresa didn't talk much. She always sat in the same spot as if that corner were refuge. She listened more than she spoke, and when she smiled, her entire face lit up, conveying a rare serenity. But the detail that caught her attention the most was another. For her, Dr. Enrique never accepted payment. It didn't matter if the appointment was simple or complicated. It didn't matter if the hospital was crowded or if the medications were expensive. Whenever Mrs. Teresa came into his office, he would just smile and say, "Don't worry about it, Mrs. Teresa. Your health is what matters." My colleagues found it strange. "Enrique, why do you never charge this patient anything?" He looked away, changed the subject, and avoided the conversation. The nurses also whispered among themselves. Some thought it was just excessive kindness. Others thought it might be unfair favoritism. But no one could decipher the mystery. To outsiders, it seemed like just another generous gesture from a doctor who had a reputation for being too good for this world. But there was something in that look, in that silence, in that relationship between the two that couldn't be explained so easily. Why did he never accept anything in return from that particular lady? With each visit from Donna Teresa, the mood changed. He seemed more attentive, more caring, as if he were caring not just for a body, but for a soul that was deeply important to him. And Mrs. Teresa? She never insisted. She received the gesture with gratitude, but deep in her eyes there was something no one could see, a secret kept for decades, a link that united those two lives long before the hospital, long before the white coat, long before medicine, a secret capable of completely changing the way everyone saw that doctor, a secret that, when revealed, would make every person understand that kindness is not a coincidence, and that some debts of love simply cannot be paid with money. What existed between Dr. Enrique and Mrs. Teresa was deeper than a doctor-patient relationship. It was a hidden, silent connection, a story that began long before anyone imagined. And what no one knew was that in that apparently fragile woman lived the answer to the greatest mystery of Dr. Enrique's life. And that's where the story takes a turn, because what seemed like mere charity was actually the purest form of gratitude. People found it strange. Whenever Donna Teresa showed up at the hospital, Dr. Enrique's demeanor changed. Already known for his attentiveness, he seemed to be even more delicate. He touched her hands gently, spoke in a low tone, and every gesture seemed imbued with silent respect. Naturally, the questions began. "Doctor, why do you never charge this woman anything?" his co-workers would venture. He smirked, looked away, and instead of answering, talked about something else. This avoidance only deepened the mystery. The nurses were talking among themselves in the hallways. "I wonder if she's related to him? Maybe she's an old neighbor, someone he wants to protect. Or is it just kindness?" No one was sure. But everyone sensed something was different. An invisible link connected the two, a thread so subtle it couldn't be explained by medicine alone. As time passed, Donna Teresa's presence became almost an enigma for those who knew Dr. Enrique. Each visit was met with curious glances, each free consultation fueling speculation. And all the while, he remained silent, harboring a secret deep within his heart, until one rainy afternoon decided to reveal part of the truth. The hospital was bustling. Patients crowded the reception area, heavy rain beat against the windows, and doctors scurried about. Amidst the hustle and bustle, a colleague of Enrique's entered his office to retrieve a document. Rummaging through drawers, he found something unexpected, an old photograph tucked away among papers already yellowed with age. In the photo, a thin, visibly ill child stared at the camera with lost, pain-filled eyes. It was a portrait that spoke more than 1,000 words. It showed fragility, fear, and the proximity of death. But that wasn't all. Beside that child was a woman. Her hair was darker than it is now, her skin less wrinkled, but her gaze left no doubt. It was Mrs. Teresa. She sat beside the boy, holding his hand tightly, as if refusing to let him fall. The contrast between them was shocking. On one side, the fragile child, on the brink of despair. On the other, a simple woman, but with expression of strength and tenderness, capable of weathering any storm. The colleague stood motionless before the image, his eyes fixed on that scene frozen in time. It wasn't just any memory, it was a piece of a story Enrique had never told. When the doctor entered the room and realized what was happening, his eyes widened for a moment. He quickly took the photo, as if protecting a secret treasure, and put it back. But his silence, the way he held the paper, only heightened the suspicion. There, was a much deeper connection between the two. Who was that child? What had Donna Teresa done for her? And what's more, why did Henry hide this from everyone? The colleague didn't dare ask, but one thing was clear. That photograph left no room for doubt. Donna Teresa wasn't just a special patient. She was part of something much bigger, something that came from a distant past, and that somehow explained the doctor's devotion. The rumor soon spread. People began to look at Donna Teresa differently, trying to find clues in her calm demeanor and her always simple words. And Enrique, increasingly pressured by the weight of unspoken questions, sank into silence. That night, alone in his office, he stared at the photo for long minutes. The image brought back memories that still hurt, memories of a time when his life hung by a thread. And deep down he knew he couldn't hide it forever. Sooner or later the truth would come out. And when it did, everyone would understand why that doctor never allowed Teresa to pay for even one consultation. What seemed like just a gesture of kindness hid the greatest debt of gratitude in a man's life, an impossible debt to pay, but one he tried to repay with every smile, every medicine offered, every silent care. And now the past began to knock on the door. But what really happened in that childhood? How could a simple woman change the destiny of a boy who would one day become a doctor? The answers were about to be revealed, and no one was prepared for the intensity of that truth. The revelation came like a bolt of lightning. Donna Teresa wasn't just another patient. She wasn't just a frail old woman silently occupying the last row of the hospital. The truth was much bigger, much deeper, and it completely changed the way everyone saw Dr. Enrique. Decades earlier, when he wasn't yet the respected doctor everyone knew, not even a medical student, Enrique was just a poor boy, scarred by abandonment and pain. He grew up in his home, lacking structure, stability, and often without even food to eat. The world seemed to have forgotten him. Back then, the disease arrived without asking for permission. High fever, persistent cough, weakness. Little by little Enrique's body gave way. There was no medicine. There was no money. There was no one willing to lend a hand. No one except her. Mrs. Teresa, she herself still young, had a life full of hardships. She worked all day to support her young and days of uncertainty. Nights. She was barely able to care for herself, and yet she opened the doors of her home to that boy without a destiny. I remember the scene described later by witnesses. Donna Teresa placing a bowl of soup before the boy, even though she knew it would diminish her own family's food supply. She arranged the thin blankets over his feverish body, even though it meant being cold in the early hours. She didn't see him as a burden, but as a life that deserved to be cared for. She shared her food, her bed, and above all, her faith. While many looked at that boy with indifference, believing he wouldn't survive the week, she believed. She prayed every night. She whispered words of encouragement at the foot of his bed. She held his hand tightly, as if silently saying, "You won't leave. I won't let you." Enrique, still a child, didn't quite understand the reason for such dedication, but he felt it. He felt the difference between abandonment and care, between the world's indifference and the love of someone who, even without blood ties, decided to fight for him. It was a long and painful period. Doctors weren't interested in the case of a poor boy. Medicines were too expensive, but Donna Teresa improvised. making teas, searching for home remedies, and seeking help from neighbors. She fought against the impossible. And little by little, that fragile body began to respond. The fever subsided, the cough subsided, and her appetite returned. Every small sign of improvement was celebrated as a huge victory within that humble home. Against all odds, the boy survived. And it was in that moment, lying on a borrowed bed, fed by hands that had almost nothing to offer, that Enrique learned his first great lesson. Life only makes sense when someone believes in you. Donna Teresa not only saved his biological life, she also saved his hope. She planted in him the idea that nothing is more precious than caring for another human being. It was there, between simple walls and sleepless nights, that the dream was born. The boy who nearly died from neglect decided that if he survived, he would dedicate his life to saving others. He didn't want anyone else to feel the abandonment he had known. And so, the fragile child became, years later, the admired doctor that everyone saw in the hospital corridors. But there was something that few knew. Behind every free consultation, every gesture of kindness, there was the memory of an impossible debt to pay. Henry never forgot. He never forgot the woman who fed him when he was hungry, who gave him shelter when he had nowhere to sleep, who gave him faith when everyone else had given up. The truth is that his entire life was, in a way, a silent gratitude to Donna Teresa. And now, decades later, fate had closed the circle. He, a doctor, she, a patient. He saving lives every day. She reminding him with a serene gaze that her own life had once been saved. Enrique's story wasn't just about medicine. Gratitude. It's about how a simple gesture can forever change the course of another life. But what would happen when the entire hospital discovered the depth of this connection? How would this truth change not only the view of the doctor, but also the true power of kindness? The past had returned, but there was still more to be revealed. And now fate had brought the two face to face. Decades passed, but there they were, in the same corridors of a hospital that daily witnessed pain, hope, and miracles. Only this time the roles had been reversed. He, doctor; she, patient. To the hasty eyes of others, it seemed like just another relationship of care and generosity. But for Enrique, each free consultation wasn't a simple professional decision. It was a silent declaration. Every gesture of attention, every prescribed medicine, every word of comfort carried a profound meaning. I haven't forgotten. I'm still alive because one day you believed in me. What many call in charity gratitude. A gratitude that time has not erased, that success has not diminished, and that money could never replace. Enrique never said it out loud. He didn't need to. All he had to do was look into his eyes when he cared for Donna Teresa, to realize there was something there far beyond medicine. It was as if with each beat of her heart, he was beating back the very heart she once helped keep alive. People talked. Some thought it was an exaggeration. Others tried to decipher the mystery. But the truth is, no one could comprehend the intensity of that bond. It wasn't about blood ties, but about bonds of destiny. Donna Teresa, even weakened by age, always had the same sweet gaze. When Enrique examined her, she smiled discreetly, as if she knew something others didn't. He never questioned her non-payment for consultations. He never insisted on giving money, because he understood that what was at stake wasn't a transaction, but a story. And what was most striking was the silence. Neither of them cared to explain themselves to the others, because some stories don't need to be told in words. They are written in the soul, lived in gestures felt on the skin. But destiny, which so often surprises, still had more in store for those two. The nights in the hospital began to reveal new memories. Enrique, as he passed Donna Teresa's room, would find himself standing there, watching her sleep. Vivid images flashed through his mind, himself still a boy, feverish, breathing heavily, and that same woman, younger, at his side, wiping the sweat from his forehead and whispering, "It will pass, my son. You will prevail." It was impossible not to be moved. Time had transformed that fragile boy into a doctor, but Teresa's gaze remained the same, full of faith, full of love. And amidst these memories, Enrique began to realize something even more powerful. His entire life had been built on that seed of kindness she had planted. His dream of becoming a doctor, determination to study against all odds, his strength to endure sleepless nights, all had been born from the gesture of a woman who refused to let him die when the whole world seemed to have given up. And now he had the chance to give back. Maybe not in the same way, maybe not with the same sacrifice, but with the same love. It was as if the wheel of life had turned to show everyone that nothing is in vain. That what you do today, even if it seems small, can completely change someone's future. But what would happen when this connection came to light in front of everyone? How would colleagues, patients, and the city itself react upon discovering that the most human doctor in the region only existed because one day a simple woman decided to love beyond herself? The entire hospital was about to learn a truth that would transform not only the way they viewed Dr. Enrique, but also the way they viewed the power of a single act of kindness. Because deep down, that story wasn't just about gratitude. It was about the power of one life touching another and changing everything forever. The entire hospital was never the same again. Doctors, nurses, patients, everyone who previously saw Dr. Enrique as just an excellent professional now saw something much greater. He wasn't just a man in a white coat. He was living proof that saving lives goes far beyond techniques and diagnoses. Saving lives for him was giving back. It was honoring a gesture that one day rescued him from death. And in that environment where so many suffered and fought for survival, Enrique and Donna Teresa's story became a burning flame, a constant reminder that no act of kindness is lost in time. Donna Teresa, already frail, observed everything with the serenity of someone who knew she had accomplished her mission. The smile on her face was subtle, but it carried a universe of meaning. She knew that somehow the seed she planted decades earlier had blossomed into something far greater than she could have imagined. Every patient who received care, every life saved by Dr. Enrique's hands, was also the result of her courage and generosity. Her kindness hadn't saved just one boy. It had saved all those who would be indirectly touched by his life. And that was bigger than any recognition. Enrique, in turn, understood something that would stay with him forever. Life is a cycle. The good you do may disappear for a time, may get lost in the rush and forgotten, but it always finds a way. Gratitude never ages. It transcends generations, transcends pain, and transcends time. At that moment, he understood that his story wasn't about debt, but about legacy, and that the greatest gift he could give to Teresa wasn't just free consultations, but the certainty that her gesture had multiplied, transforming into hundreds, perhaps thousands, of other gestures of love, spread throughout the world. Perhaps this is the true meaning of life, to create invisible chains of kindness that connect one person to another, often without them even realizing it. Henrique no longer needed to say anything. His gaze and actions already told the story, and Donna Teresa, with her sweet silence, confirmed that some soul connections don't require words. The cycle was complete. She saved him, he saved others, and everyone in some way was transformed by this current of eternal love.